So much of storytelling is built on the crux of a mystery. It's one of the greatest driving forces for curiosity that we know. It tickles the brain, keeps one thinking, and for D&D, keeps your players engaging with the world on a conceptual level. I think we all love and crave to know what's really going on out there. Our brains obsess over snippets of incomplete information in wondering what could be the rest of it. The beautiful thing about a mystery is that it can be any size. A single mystery can be the crux of a whole campaign if you want it to be, but it can also be self-contained. A murder mystery can be as big as a town or as small as a patch in the road, but at the end of the day they all have the same components. An event, those involved, a secret, some meddling, and most importantly, a drive, a will for it to be solved. So writing a compelling mystery can be your greatest asset, but it can just as easily be your downfall. A too dense mystery can be such a huge turnoff, and so can a too light one. If there's one thing that you hear over and over again, is that your players will always come up with some avenue that you never thought about in your wildest dreams. No matter how much you prepare, something unexpected will happen. Every person is going to think differently. No matter how obvious a solution or hint may seem to you as the DM, you should not be expecting your players to easily come to the same conclusion. Remember that as the DM, you have knowledge of the full picture, the whole story and all its clues, hints, answers and red herrings, all there up in your noggin, whilst your players, on the other hand, aren't privy to such details. So with that in mind, never make your players have to take one very specific action in order to progress, because they never will. Instead, make sure there are multiple avenues to succeeding. It's so important to make sure that players have these avenues. In my first foray into DMing, I planned out a short little 1 to 2 shot adventure with the most over-engineered room of curiosities that the world has ever seen. The players were to follow an NPC into the room, only to find them vanished by the time they got there. Their goal now being to find all the clues to unlocking and finding the passageway hidden away in the room, and find the NPC before they got too far. It was described as such: a dilapidated and claustrophobic room, worn stone walls and floors, and a wooden overhang built on thin and rotting planks. A room that was once a study, judging by the bookcases lined with lichen and mould by your left, and an overturned desk dusted in glass shards by your right. For newer editions were a setting of candles by the back wall, lit and melting wax slowly into the crevices between the stones. The room was built with the intent that no matter what the players did, there was no real way for them to fail. Each of the 4 areas had their own attached paragraphs of extra detail and chances for investigation to be had. There were lore tidbits, items, and countless hints strewn across the room, all attached to various skill checks. And if they failed every single one of them and found only the trail going cold, the answer would still reveal itself, with only a little bit of property damage on the side. There was a fear attached in this building, apart from the one that my head would go blank the moment I sat at the table, but the fear that my players would fail to discover something for whatever reason and the game would screech to a halt in its absence. I obsessed over making sure there was no true fail state and built a contingency plan into every brick. I think a level of preparation is quite important for mysteries. It saves things going over one's head in the heat of the game. But attaching DCs and flavor paragraphs to every single apparatus like I did is perhaps a touch overkill. But it all comes from a good place. I knew I needed to build in multiple avenues for players to solve mysteries and discover hints. And I knew I needed to be wary of locking out progression behind a single skill check, because even multiple checks can be problematic in a case of a string of bad luck. Even with fail-safes built in, there are still countless stories online about players getting stumped by easy puzzles or a basic mystery for hours. And as funny as that is, I don't think that it necessarily boils down to the players being idiots per se. I think a lot of it comes from the expectations. a mismatch between what the DM expects them to do and the goals that have been communicated at the table. Players in general tend to be very suspicious of puzzles, especially simple ones. Whilst the DM may plonk an easy puzzle in front of the players as a little break, players can often see them as being too easy to be the right answer and try to look for an alternate way of solving or circumventing the issue. I've found that there's often a fear that completing the puzzle in the straightforward way may instead lead to opening a trap or activating some sort of defense system instead of helping out with the party's goals, even if the DM's intent is just to open a door into the next room. You can't really pinpoint where something funny and psychological like this comes from, but you can try to help it from being an issue. And it's, say it with me, communication. I think lots of DMs tend to just communicate the negative possible consequences for actions, but there's a neglect in positive ones. If knowledge of negative consequences fosters fear and mistrust, positive consequences can foster confidence and trust. If you want your players to go down the right path, bolster their decisions. Give them confidence that they're doing the right thing. Like, add the reward into your cryptic puzzle clues so players don't fear an ambush or an unexpected consequence. Not everything has to be layered in riddle and implication. Visualization is also another issue that's easy to run into. Simply by exclusively using text descriptions of things, the images of the surroundings will differ in the players' heads. This is fine and expected even in usual play. You can't make it not happen. Whether that be from mishearing, misunderstanding, misspeaking, gap filling, or the natural differences in the human brain, you shouldn't be expecting the mental images of your players to line up perfectly, which is fine. But when it comes to puzzles, if any part of your solution relies on a specific arrangement of anything, you're digging your own grave. For anything regarding specific positions or any sort of spatial relativity puzzle, unless you have the greatest of faiths in your players, please, just draw it out for them. Pre-prep a little sheet with a diagram on it, or pen and paper it at the table. This will save you all from a mighty headache and a half an hour of explaining everything's lefts and rights. Whilst this advice may seem more relevant to puzzles than mysteries, they really aren't that different. A puzzle is just a self-contained mystery, a boiled-down experience, usually contained in a room with a plaque attached, and intended by its creator to be solved. Whilst mysteries are a touch more deceptive, perhaps, the architect of your mystery likely doesn't want to be found out. Though, with that in mind, careful not to trip into that landmine. Whilst the in-world rationality behind a mystery is not having it be solved, the out-of-game rationality is the opposite. You want this to be solved, within some sort of reasonable time frame. The feel of the mystery is much more important than the mystery itself, I find. If your very solvable mystery feels like clue hunting and putting together pieces that you weren't supposed to find, then great. Engineering your mystery with the intent to be solved is a good thing. It's not railroading or removing agency as some people might claim. It's a way to keep the story moving forward and to give your players the feeling of progress. In making a solvable mystery, the greatest fumble in this step comes in the form of objectivity. Whilst writing a mystery as a mystery and figuring out a little devious ways to hide your hints is a great jolly fun, you can't let go of the fact of the facts. Every mystery exists because a number of objective events happened in an order with a little confusion and meddling added in along the way. Whilst ideating a mystery can come from any source, I highly recommend starting the planning from the objective phase. Lay out the timeline and facts of the event in question. The who's, where's, what's, when's should be laid out before things start to become obscured thanks to the devious hands of your schema. Objectivity is the most important part in making things work, I find. With a set of concrete facts, there's no risk of the clues not lining up or a mystery with no conclusion. Whilst, of course, you can fiddle with things behind the scenes if things go a little bit AWOL or otherwise not to your liking. But keep a little list of what happened and what leads to what, without all the flowery language of ambiguity. In all, make players feel like detectives by giving them clues. Hide things in your sandbox that you can't wait to have them find, and wait for them to put all the pieces together. Let your mysteries be solved with an objective truth behind them. And of course, remember to have fun. See you next time.